The dusty road of Mabund stretched long and quiet, glowing red beneath the rising sun. It was not just a road, it was the heartbeat of the village. Every footprint, every wheel mark, every fallen leaf carried a story whispered by travelers, spirits, and destiny itself. Some villagers said the road remembered everything. Others believed it watched silently, choosing who would rise and who would fall. A warm wind swept across the path, lifting red dust into the air. The dust danced like tiny spirits, swirling and twisting as if delivering messages from ancestors long gone. An elder passing by muttered softly, "Ha, even the wind speaks today." On one side of the road sat a small, humble food stall built from old wooden planks and a torn piece of cloth for shade. Smoke curled softly from a clay pot. The smell of warm porridge drifted into the morning air, carried by the wind like a blessing. Mama Thandi bent over the pot, her tired hands stirring slowly. Her feet were dusty from walking, her dress faded from years of sun, but her eyes glowed with kindness that even hardship could not dim. She murmured to herself, "This road brings many mouths, yet I must feed even those who have nothing to give." As she worked, the road came alive around her. Traders walked by carrying baskets on their heads. A man led 2 goats with a rope. Children ran barefoot, leaving tiny footprints behind as they chased each other, laughing freely. Dust rose behind their feet like orange smoke, marking their joy. Farther down, elders sat in a circle beneath a crooked baobab tree. Their voices rose in slow, steady rhythms, stories of courage, betrayal, and the wisdom of their fathers. Every evening, flames would dance in the same spot, but even in daylight the place held the warmth of old tales. Women could be heard grinding grains nearby. Their wooden pestles rose and fell in a steady beat. Each strike echoed like a drum of life, their soft singing weaving through the air. The road gives, the road takes, but the heart must stay clean. Even strangers felt welcomed by their voices. But the villagers knew something else too. Not all footsteps on this road belonged to humans. Some belonged to spirits that passed when no one was watching. Some belonged to destiny, walking silently, choosing the next life it would touch. A traveler who had camped near the village once swore he saw a shadow moving without a body. The elders only nodded and said, "On this road, the living and the unseen meet. Respect both." Mama Thandi had always believed that. That is why she greeted every traveler with a gentle nod, every child with a warm smile, and every lost soul with a bowl of food. That morning, as the wind blew again, the dust lifted higher than before, almost shimmering. Mama Thandi paused. She wiped sweat from her forehead and whispered, "The road is restless today. Something, or someone is coming." Her words drifted into the wind, and the dust settled slowly again. Little did she know, the same road that brought merchants, wanderers, elders, warriors, and spirits was preparing to bring someone who would change her life forever. The sun hung low over the red earth road, painting the village of Mabund in soft gold. Dust rose each time a traveler's sandals touched the ground, dancing in the warm evening wind. Beside that long road stood a small food stall made from old wooden planks and a roof of rusted iron sheets. Though simple, it had a warmth that called to people like a mother calling her children home. From inside came the smell of hot porridge and roasted plantain, food for the weary, food for the poor, food for anyone with an empty stomach. Drumbeats echoed from the far end of the village where the young men practiced at dusk, their rhythms steady like the heartbeat of the land. Elders sat under a broad acacia tree, sharing soft words of wisdom to whoever cared to listen. Women crushed grains with heavy stones, humming songs taught by their grandmothers. Barefoot children raced along the road, shouting, laughing, kicking dust into the sky. All around the stall lived the spirit of community, kindness, and respect for those who came before. Inside the stall worked Mama Thandi, her back bent from years of labor, her hands rough but gentle. She moved slowly, like someone who carried many silent burdens. Every scoop of porridge she served came with a blessing whispered under her breath. On her face lived both joy and sorrow, joy from feeding others, sorrow from the poverty that clung to her like a stubborn shadow. At home, her mother lay sick, needing medicine Mama Thandi could barely afford. Yet she still smiled, still fed people who had no money. That was who she was. It was on one such quiet evening, as the sun dipped low, that a thin boy stepped out from behind the bushes. Dust covered his legs, his hair, even his eyelashes. His clothes were torn, and his eyes, though young, carried a sadness too old for his age. He stood there watching, silent, as if afraid to disturb the world. Mama Thandi glanced at him and felt something shift inside her heart. "My child," she said softly, though she had never seen him before. "You look as hungry as the sky looks for rain. Come, sit." The boy hesitated. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then slowly walked to the bench. He sat with his back straight, hands folded, eyes lowered. When Mama Thandi placed a warm bowl before him, he whispered, "Thank you." His voice trembled like a leaf caught in an evening breeze. "What is your name?" she asked gently. "Cato," he whispered. She nodded. "Eat Cato. A hungry child brings a hungry blessing to your soul. That is what my mother always says." Cato lifted the spoon with shaky fingers and ate slowly, almost fearfully, as if expecting someone to snatch it away. Across the road, a woman passing by raised her eyebrow. "Mama Thandi," she called sharply, "you feed every stray like they are your own. One day, kindness will finish you." Mama Thandi only shrugged. "If kindness finishes me, then I will finish with peace." Rumors spread like ants on spilled sugar. Some villagers whispered that Cato was an abandoned son. Others said he was a runaway. Some muttered darker things. Cursed child, spirit touched, bad omen. But Mama Thandi kept feeding him, each day, each evening, even when her food ran low. One night, as she washed utensils under the dim moonlight, she noticed Cato sweeping the floor without being asked. His movements were quiet but careful, like someone used to working without being seen. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I want to," he replied softly. "You give me food." A strange peace filled her heart, yet she could feel tension crawling around her stall like a silent snake. Neighbors watching, gossip growing, fear whispering. Still, each time Cato returned, dustier, thinner, more tired, Mama Thandi filled a bowl for him. For she knew something the others had forgotten. A heart that closes its doors is a heart that loses its light. And in this village where spirits walked with men and ancestors watched from the tall trees, kindness was the only fire that kept the darkness away. But the villagers feared what they did not understand. Each day, their whispers grew louder, sharper. Every bowl Mama Thandi gave the boy pulled her further into trouble, deeper into the place where compassion and tradition collided like storm clouds. Yet she stood firm. And Cato, he kept returning, quiet as a shadow following its owner. None of them knew that the dusty road before the stall was not just a road for travelers. It was a path where spirits, fate, and long-hidden truths walked side by side, waiting, watching, moving closer with every breath. The sun slid slowly toward the horizon, pouring long shadows across the dusty red earth road. As evening approached, the village of Mabund began to change its breath. The air grew cooler, the wind softer, and then, like a heartbeat waking the land, the drums began. Thump, 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 thump. The rhythm rose from the western hill, where young men gathered at sunset. Their hands moved like they were born from the drums themselves, calling to every soul in the village. Children who had been playing barefoot suddenly paused, heads turning toward the sound. They knew what it meant. "Go home now," one child whispered to another. "The drums are calling." The sound traveled far, wrapping itself around the wooden houses, gliding through the cooking smoke, brushing over the fields. It did not only summon children. It reached the elders sitting beneath the ancient baobab tree, reminding them it was time for evening stories, time to speak the wisdom of the ancestors, time to guide the young with words instead of sticks. When the drums played, no one in Mabund felt alone. They were a reminder that the people before them still watched, still listened, still walked with them. Near the roadside where dust rose like tiny spirits dancing in the wind, Mama Thandi stood behind her small wooden stall. The drumbeats made her pause as she stirred a pot of warm porridge. She closed her eyes for a moment, and her lips moved in a quiet prayer. "Ancestors, walk with us another day," she whispered. "Guide my tired hands. Help my mother breathe easy tonight." Her stall was small, just 2 wooden tables, a shaky bench, and a roof made from old iron sheets that groaned each time the wind blew. But inside it lived the warmth of her heart. When people passed by, they smelled roasted maize, millet porridge, soft boiled beans, and sometimes, when blessings allowed, fried fish. The drumbeats grew louder, rolling across the road. Cato stood nearby, sweeping the ground with a bundle of dry grass. His movements were slow, almost shy. Dust covered him from hair to feet, but his eyes, quiet and deep, held something older than his age. The drums reached him too, and he stopped sweeping to listen. He stood very still, as if the sound awakened something hidden inside him. "Do you hear them?" Mama Thandi asked, smiling gently. He nodded. "They sound like someone calling home." "That is exactly what they do," she said. "They tell the children to return. They tell the elders to speak. And they remind us that the ones who died before us still walk behind our shadows." Cato lowered his eyes again, and for a moment, his face tightened with a feeling he did not speak out loud. Was someone calling him home? Did he have a home to be called back to? He did not know. Two women, grinding grains outside their compound, paused to listen to the drums, humming softly. A group of elders began walking toward the baobab, leaning on their sticks. Children pulled each other's hands and ran toward their houses as their mothers shouted, "If the drums reach home before you do, you'll sleep hungry." Laughter filled the air. The stall sat at the center of it all, a little island of warmth standing by the dusty road where travelers, strangers, and spirits passed without announcing themselves. It was said by many that the red road carried destiny. Some said it carried trouble. Others said it carried blessings that walked slowly, arriving only when the time was right. Mama Thandi looked at the road often, especially at dusk. She knew that life changed most during the quiet moments, when the sun was too tired to fight and the shadows grew long enough to hide secrets. "Cato," she called softly, "come and drink some porridge. Your hands have worked enough." He hesitated, as he always did, but she pushed the bowl toward him. "Eat, child. A hungry child brings a hungry blessing to your soul." That was her belief, born from her mother's teachings, born from the old tales. Other villagers, passing by, whispered to each other, "There she goes again, feeding that dusty boy. She gives food away like she is a queen with endless pots. Does she not fear the stories about him? What if he is spirit-touched?" But Mama Thandi ignored them. She placed a small calabash of porridge in front of Cato with a smile. One of the elders walking by slowed his steps and looked at her. "You have a big heart, Thandi," he said in a low voice. "But remember, when you give to a stranger, the ancestors watch closely." "I know," she replied, lifting her chin. "Let them watch. My spirit is clean." Across the road, the drums beat stronger, sending their last call of the day across the village. The sky turned orange, then red, then purple, colors shifting like the wings of an old spirit bird guarding the land. Cato took a sip of porridge. His small hands trembled, just slightly. Mama Thandi saw it but said nothing. The drumbeats faded. Night crept in softly, carrying secrets in its pockets. The villagers closed their doors. The ancestors, awakened by the rhythm of the drums, began to walk. And though the road looked quiet, the air around Mama Thandi's stall felt different, as if something unseen had taken its place in the shadows, watching, waiting, choosing the right moment to step forward. Night fell gently over Mabund like a mother covering a child with a warm blanket. The red earth road darkened, the stars opened their bright eyes, and the air filled with the soft hum of crickets welcoming the moon. At the heart of the village, the elders gathered around the great baobab tree, its thick roots rising from the earth like the backs of old spirits resting after a long journey. A fire crackled before them, rising in bright orange tongues. Sparks drifted upward, floating into the sky like tiny souls ascending to meet the ancestors. The children came running after finishing their chores, their faces glowing in the firelight. Even the teenagers, too proud to listen during the day, found their feet carrying them to the circle, because when the elders spoke, the village listened. Mama Thandi arrived late, her steps slow from a long day at the stall. Cato followed behind her, keeping a few paces back as he always did, careful not to stand too close, afraid his presence would bring whispers. But the fire pulled him forward, and he settled silently near a group of children who stared but said nothing. The oldest elder, Baba Muntu, lifted his staff and tapped it on the ground 3 times. The whole gathering silenced. "Children of Mabund," he called, his deep voice echoing across the open field. "Tonight we speak of courage, respect, and the journey of destiny." The children leaned forward. Cato looked at the elder's face, the wrinkles shaped like rivers on a map, each one a story. Baba Munta pointed his staff toward the fire. "Look at these flames. Each spark that rises carries a lesson from our ancestors. Watch them well." A spark flew upward, glowing like a tiny star. The children followed it with their eyes until it disappeared into the night. "This is courage," Baba Munta said. "Even a small spark dares to rise toward the sky, though the wind may kill it. Courage is rising, even when the world pushes you down." Cato's chest tightened. He lowered his gaze to the ground, but the elder's words settled deep inside him like a stone in a quiet river. Another elder, Mama Rono, leaned forward and spoke in a gentle voice. "Respect is not shown with the mouth, but with the heart. When you greet someone, you greet the spirit behind them. When you share food, you share your blessings. When you help the weak, you help your future." Her eyes drifted to Mama Thandi, who looked away shyly. A murmur rose among the people, but Baba Munta lifted his hand, silencing them. He continued, "Destiny walks slowly, children. Sometimes it hides in dust. Sometimes it sleeps in a forgotten child. Sometimes it waits inside a poor woman's act of kindness." Cato's head lifted suddenly, his breath held tight. Mama Thandi stared straight into the fire, her eyes reflecting the flames like a mirror of stories. The other children watched the sparks dance upward again. Some reached up playfully, trying to touch them, but each spark vanished before their fingers could grasp it. A young boy asked, "Baba, how do we know when destiny is near?" The elder smiled, revealing missing teeth and deep wisdom. "Destiny arrives like the first rain, unexpected, unstoppable, and filled with power. It may come in the footsteps of a stranger. It may arrive in the cry of a hungry child. It may rise in the firelight when truth is ready to be seen." Cato held his breath, feeling the words settle inside his bones. Mama Thandi touched her heart gently. She remembered her mother's voice whispering, "Kindness is a seed. Plant it anywhere, and watch how the ancestors water it." Another spark rose from the fire, larger, brighter. The wind carried it gently. All eyes followed it. Baba Munta lowered his voice to a deep whisper. "But hear this well. My children, when destiny comes, it does not knock softly. It shakes the ground. It moves the winds. It calls loudly for the ones it belongs to." A hush fell over the crowd. The flames crackled. The night breathed. Cato felt something warm inside his chest, as if a forgotten memory had stirred awake for the first time in years. Mama Thandi watched him from the corner of her eye. She wondered why his small shoulders looked heavier tonight. The elders ended the gathering with a blessing, raising their hands toward the sky as the sparks rose one last time. The children clapped softly, and the families began to leave the fire circle, each person taking a little piece of wisdom home. As Mama Thandi stood to go, she placed her hand on Cato's shoulder. "Come, child," she whispered. "The night grows cold." He nodded, but he kept looking back at the dying fire. He watched the last spark rise. It drifted upward, higher, higher, until it vanished completely. He did not know why, but he whispered, "Is destiny looking for me?" The night gave no answer. But in the distance, far down the red earth road, a faint rumble echoed, slow, strong, and growing. The red earth road lay quiet under the warm sun, stretching like an old serpent across the village. Beside it stood a small food stall made of wood, palm leaves, and hope. The smoke from boiling pots rose gently, carrying the smell of millet porridge and roasted plantain into the evening wind. As dusk arrived, the drumbeats from the village center began, slow at first, then stronger, calling people home. Women pounded grains with wooden mortars, their movements steady and proud. Barefoot children chased each other, their laughter mixing with the hum of the elders who sat under the old baobab tree, telling stories of ancestors and their forgotten bravery. This village lived by simple rules: kindness first, community always, and respect for the spirits that walked before them. Even the wind seemed to whisper reminders of these values. At the heart of this humble stall stood Mama Thandi. Her shoulders were strong from years of carrying firewood and worries, and her smile was warm like morning sunlight. She had little, just enough to feed a traveler, a stranger, or anyone fate placed in her path. But she carried a heavier burden, a sick mother waiting at home, coughing through the nights. Yet every morning, Thandi returned to her stall to keep hope alive. One day, a small boy appeared at her counter, dusty from head to toe, silent like a shadow. His hair was uncombed, his clothes too big for his thin frame. The villagers called him many names: abandoned son, runaway child, cursed boy, even one touched by wandering spirits. But the boy never argued. He only lowered his head and waited quietly. Thandi set a wooden bowl in front of him. "Eat, child. Food does not reject a hungry mouth." The boy looked up, surprised. "My name is Cato." From that day, Cato returned every afternoon. And every afternoon, Mama Thandi fed him, even when her own pots were almost empty. But whispers grew like snakes in tall grass. Women shook their heads. Men muttered into their cups. "There goes Thandi again," someone said, "feeding misfortune with her own hands." "She will bring bad luck to all of us," said another. But Thandi responded with calm eyes. "A hungry child brings a hungry blessing to the soul." Still, the tension in the village thickened like clouded water, tradition arguing with compassion, fear standing against humanity. Soon, people began to point fingers. Customers left her stall. Some avoided the place entirely. "She gives free food to a stray," they grumbled. "Why should we pay?" At the center of the gossip was Mama Kalisa, a rival seller whose stall stood just across the road. Her words were sharp and sweet, dangerous like a poison fruit. "She wants attention," Kalisa hissed. "People will call her the saint of lost children. Just watch, this Cato is either a thief or a demon child. One day he will bring fire to this place." Her followers nodded, and slowly they stopped buying from Thandi. Each missing customer was another coin lost, another medicine she could not buy, another night her mother groaned in pain. Yet Cato stayed close, helping wherever he could. He swept the floor with his small hands. He washed dishes, careful not to break even one. But there were stranger things about him, things that made the villagers more uneasy. One evening, he paused and looked at the horizon. "A storm is coming," he whispered. Thandi frowned. "But the sky is clear." Minutes later, dark clouds rolled in like angry spirits, and heavy rain washed the land. Another day, a traveler arrived with a patterned cloth tied around his waist. Cato stared at it, his eyes wide. "That symbol belongs to warriors of the Eastern Ridge," he murmured. The traveler froze. "How does a street boy know this?" Cato did not answer. He simply walked away. Inside her heart, Mama Thandi felt fear and pity wrestling. She wanted to protect the boy, but the burden grew heavier each day. At night her mother warned her gently, voice trembling with age. "My daughter, kindness is not cheap. It asks for courage." Cato, hearing the pain in Thandi's voice on many nights, felt shame curling inside him like cold smoke. "I am making her suffer," he whispered to himself. "Maybe I should disappear." But fate did not let him. The village children mocked him, throwing small stones when adults were not looking. "You are cursed," they shouted. "Go back where you came from." During gatherings, adults pushed him away. "This is not your place," they barked. One night, a group of drunk men caught him near the refuse pit. "You little rat," one slurred, "stealing leftovers?" Before they could strike him, Thandi ran forward, breathless, holding her wooden spoon like a warrior's staff. "Touch him," she said, "and you answer to me." The men backed away, grumbling, embarrassed. But the air in the village was heavy now, ready to break. Something big was coming. Even the drums sounded different, like they sensed danger on the wind. Then, on a burning afternoon, the dusty road trembled. 4 black SUVs, shiny, powerful, and completely out of place, rolled into the village, raising clouds that danced in the heat. Women dropped their baskets. Children froze mid-run. Elders stood slowly worried. The SUVs stopped right in front of Mama Thandi's stall. Bodyguards stepped out first. Tall, strong men with dark glasses and heavy boots. Then came others in fine African suits, clothes embroidered with gold and royal thread. Villagers whispered, "Is it the police?" "No, kidnappers. Maybe someone is dying." When the leader stepped forward, the crowd parted like water. He held an old, worn photograph in his trembling hand. His eyes searched the entire village, then stopped on Cato. "Cato," he whispered. My son! The villagers gasped. Someone dropped a clay pot. Another murmured, the boy? That boy! The leader continued, voice breaking. Years ago, during the attack on our land, he disappeared. We searched mountains, forests, seas, every village in 3 kingdoms. Many said he was dead, but I would not stop. Cato's eyes filled with tears as broken memories flashed, fire swallowing his home, screams echoing in the night, running until his legs bled, hunger twisting his stomach, waking alone beneath strange trees. The leader opened his arms. My son, come home! But Cato did not move toward him. Instead, he ran straight into Mama Thandy's arms and held her tightly, crying into her chest. She fed me, he sobbed. She protected me. She treated me like a son when I had nobody. The entire village froze. The same people who spit at Thandy now lower their eyes. Shame washed over Mama Kalisa like cold rain. No gossip, no excuse could hide her jealousy now. The chief stepped forward, voice loud enough for the spirits to hear. This woman saved my blood. She fed a child the world rejected. From today, she will never know hunger again. Her home will be repaired. Her mother will be treated. Her kindness will be honored until the sun forgets to rise. Silence hung. Then the elders began to murmur blessings, their words old as the earth. Women lifted their grinding stones with pride. Children looked at Cato with new respect. And as night arrived, sparks rose from the cooking fires, drifting into the starry sky, carrying stories of courage, compassion, and destiny to the ancestors above. For in that small village, beside the dusty red earth road, people learned once again that kindness is a seed. And even in the poorest hands, it can grow into a forest of miracles. The dusty red earth road stretched long and quiet, glowing under the warm afternoon sun. It cut through the village like an old scar, carrying stories of travelers, tired feet, and forgotten dreams. Beside this road stood a small food stall, humble, crooked, yet filled with the smell of warm spices. Smoke curled from its clay stove, lifting the aroma of millet porridge, roasted cassava, and slow-cooked stew into the air. As dusk approached, the drumbeats began, soft at first, then rising like a heartbeat shared by the whole land. Women grinding grains moved in rhythm with the beat, their wooden pestles striking deep, steady notes. Elders sat beneath the wide baobab tree, sharing wisdom that had traveled through many generations. Their voices were low, rich, and heavy with memory. Barefoot children ran through the dusty paths, their laughter echoing like birds calling at sunrise. This was a village shaped by old values, kindness before judgment, community before pride, and deep respect for the ancestors, who were believed to walk among them when the evening winds blew. Near the simmering pot stood Mama Thandy. Her hands were rough from years of stirring, serving, and surviving. Her smile, when it came, was gentle, yet her eyes carried shadows of sleepless nights. With each bowl she served, she carried the weight of her mother's illness and the burden of a quiet poverty that never left her doorway. Yet she moved with grace, like a woman who still believed that tomorrow could be kinder. One day a small boy approached, thin as a stick, clothes torn, feet dust-covered, eyes hollow. He looked like a shadow that had lost its owner. The villagers stared with suspicion. Children whispered. Dogs barked. But Mama Thandy wiped her hands on her cloth, bent forward, and said, Come, child, sit. Hunger does not choose who is worthy. The boy lowered himself slowly, as if unsure he was allowed to exist there. My name is Cato, he said softly. From that day onward, Cato came every afternoon, and every afternoon Mama Thandy placed a warm bowl in front of him. But kindness, in a world where fear rules, often becomes a spark for whispers. Some women shook their heads. She feeds misfortune with her own hands. Others murmured, That boy is cursed or spirit-touched. Trouble follows shadows like his. Men mutter behind their cups, shifting blame as easily as wind shifts dust. Still, Mama Thandy lifted her chin. A hungry child brings a hungry blessing to your soul, she said calmly. But her words were like stones thrown into a river, quickly swallowed. Soon the whispers grew into grumbling. Customers stopped coming. Even those who admired Thandy's kindness stepped away, afraid of becoming part of her misfortune. A few steps away, under a mango tree, Mama Kalisa watched everything with sharp eyes. Her own stall had once been second to Thandy's. Now jealousy tightened around her heart like a rope. "Look at her," Kalisa hissed to the women gathered around. "Pretending to be a saint, feeding a stray boy so people will praise her." They nodded, their spirits drawn to gossip like flies to sweet fruit. "Cato is dangerous," Kalisa continued. "A thief, or a demon child. Mark my words, nothing good follows a child of mystery." Her words spread fast. Soon, customers avoided Thandy completely. The pots she once emptied by noon now stayed half full. The little money she earned shrank like a puddle under harsh sun. Her mother's med. Cato noticed, and though he said nothing, shame wrapped around him like a cold blanket. He began sweeping the ground, washing dishes, carrying water pots, anything to help. When no one watched, he whispered, "I'm sorry. I am bringing trouble." But Thandy placed a hand on his thin shoulder. "Child, trouble visits all homes, but love chooses few. Do not fear my door." Yet the village saw Cato differently. One evening, he paused suddenly, looking at the sky where no clouds showed. "A storm is coming," he murmured. Minutes later, thunder cracked across the heavens and rain poured down. People crossed themselves, eyes wide. Another day, a traveler arrived wearing a cloth marked with an old tribal symbol. Cato stared at it as if it spoke to him. "That mark, it belongs to warriors of the Eastern Ridge," he said quietly. The traveler froze. Only noble blood knows the symbol. Cato turned away, silent, as if the truth inside him was locked behind thick walls. Thandy's mother, frail and weak, warned her one night. "Kindness is not cheap. It asks for courage and sacrifice." Thandy looked at her hands, trembling with worry. "But he is only a child with mysteries," her mother whispered. "Be ready." And she was right. Village children mocked him, calling him names, throwing pebbles. "Cursed boy! Go hide in the forest where ghosts belong." Adults pushed him away from gatherings. "You do not belong here," they barked. One night, a group of drunk men cornered him. "We know your type," one spat. "Beggar at day, thief at night." Before they could strike, Mama Thandy stepped forward with her wooden cooking spoon held like a warrior's staff. "Touch him, and you answer to me," she said. The men backed off, ashamed, but the damage was done. The village was a pot boiling too fast, and the air felt ready to crack. Then it happened. A fierce sun burned overhead one afternoon, making the road shimmer like a golden snake. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Dust rose high. Villagers paused, confused. 4 black SUVs, shining like night itself, rolled into the village. Their engines growled like beasts. Children screamed and ran. Women dropped their baskets. Elders stood up slowly, fear tightening their bones. The village had never seen such cars. The SUV stopped directly in front of Mama Thandy's stall. Doors opened. Bodyguards stepped out first, tall, alert, with dark glasses hiding their eyes. Then came wealthy men, wearing fine African suits embroidered with gold tips and royal patterns. Gasps swept through the village. "Is it the police?" "No, a kidnapping gang." They came for someone. The leader of the group stepped forward. His face was carved with sorrow. His hand held an old photograph, edges worn like a leaf chewed by time. His eyes scanned the villagers, searching, desperate, until they landed on Cato. "My son," he whispered. Silence fell like nightfall. The villagers stared, unable to move. "You," someone whispered. "That dirty boy." The leader continued, voice cracking with emotion. "Years ago, during the attack on my homeland, he disappeared. We searched forests, seas, mountains, every village in 3 kingdoms. He looked at Cato with tears shining in his eyes. "Your scars, your silence, they hid your truth. But you are my blood." Cato's knees weakened as memories crashed into him. Fire swallowing his home, the screams of his mother, running through thorny bushes, days of hunger, nights of fear, waking alone under strange trees. His breathing shook. The chief opened his arms. "Come home, my son." But Cato did not move. Instead, his small feet ran straight into Mama Thandy's arms. He held her tightly, sobbing like a child finally allowed to break. "She fed me," he cried. "She protected me. She treated me like a son when I had nobody." A heavy silence swallowed the entire village. People who once mocked the boy now stared at the ground. Shame wrapped around their faces. Mama Kalisa stepped backward, hiding behind others, wishing the earth would swallow her. The chief turned to the villagers, voice echoing with authority and gratitude. This woman saved my blood. She lifted a child the world rejected. She fed the son of a chief without expecting anything. From today, she will never know hunger again. He lifted his staff toward the sky. Let her kindness be remembered longer than the footprints in the dust. The elders nodded, murmuring blessings. Women wiped their eyes. Sparks rose from the evening fires, drifting upward like tiny spirits carrying the story to the ancestors. Children watched Cato with new respect, as if he had transformed from a dusty shadow into a shining legend. And in that moment, beside a humble roadside stall, the village learned once more. Kindness is never wasted, and sometimes the smallest act becomes the greatest story spoken around the fire. The sun hung low over the red earth horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty road where travelers passed with tired feet and hopeful hearts. Near the bend of that road stood a small food stall made of old wood and woven palm leaves. Smoke curled from the clay stove, carrying the warm smell of roasted maize and spiced stew. It was a humble place, nothing more than a few stools and a rough table, yet it held the spirit of the entire village. Drumbeats echoed from a distance as the young boys practiced for the evening dance. Elders sat under the great baobab tree, their voices slow and heavy with wisdom as they told stories about ancestors, courage, and the price of greed. Women crushed grains in wooden mortars, the pounding rising and falling like the heartbeat of the village. Barefoot children ran through the red dust, chasing each other, laughter ringing through the warm air. In this village, kindness was the strongest currency. Respect flowed from one generation to another like a sacred river. People believed that ancestors watched from the wind, blessing those who carried goodness in their hearts. Every act of compassion was a quiet prayer. Every shared meal was a bridge between souls. At the small food stall, a woman named Mama Thandi stirred a pot of steaming soup. Her hands were strong, her face shaped by years of struggle and sacrifice, yet her eyes carried a warmth that soothed even the restless. She moved slowly but purposefully, lifting pots, tasting broth, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. Despite her poverty, she carried herself with dignity. Villagers often said, Mama Thandi's food has the taste of a mother's blessing. And it was true. She cooked with care, with heart, with the belief that every person deserved to be fed. As the evening wind blew dust across the road, Mama Thandi looked out toward the path where strangers often came. She whispered softly, May today bring peace. May the ancestors guide every hungry soul to a full stomach. She did not know that her quiet stall, her small corner of kindness, was about to become the center of a story the village would never forget. For on that same road, hidden beneath the shadows of tall grass and whispering winds, destiny was already walking toward her. The afternoon sun sat heavily in the sky, burning deep into the red earth as if trying to melt the land itself. The heat shimmered over the long village road, making the air dance like restless spirits. Mama Thandi wiped sweat from her brow as she stirred the pot of beans. Cato sat nearby, quietly sorting spoons, his eyes half dreaming as they often were. Then the earth began to rumble, not like thunder, not like distant drums, but like something powerful, something heavy, something from a world far different from this small village. Cato's head jerked up. Mama, do you hear that? He whispered. Before Mama Thandi could reply, dust rose high on the road, so high it swallowed the sun for a moment. Villagers turned their heads. Children stopped playing. Women paused with pounding sticks frozen in the air. Then the shapes appeared, 4 large black SUVs, shining like polished stone, charging down the dusty road. They moved fast, too fast for the narrow path, their tires spitting red dust into the wind. The crowd murmured, fear crawling across the faces of even the bravest elders. Who are they? Why come here? Are they police? Kidnappers? Whispers spread like wildfire. The SUV slowed only when they reached Mama Thandi's stall. The engines growled before going silent, leaving a heavy stillness behind. Even the wind seemed to stop moving. Mama Thandi's hands trembled. Cato stepped closer to her, like a small bird seeking shelter. The first SUV door opened. A man in a fine African suit stepped out, his clothes rich with patterns not seen in this village. Behind him came bodyguards, tall and stern, their boots thudding on the ground like war drums. More men emerged from the other vehicles, all dressed in wealth and authority. Villagers stepped back. Some covered their mouths. Others hid their children. Mama Kalisa whispered sharply, "This is trouble. I knew that strange boy would bring danger." Another villager hissed, "Maybe they came to arrest Thandi. Or take the boy away." Mama Thandi stood frozen, her breath shallow. Then the leader of the group stepped forward. He was older, broad-shouldered, with a sorrow carved deep into his face. His eyes scanned the village, then stopped when they found Cato. The man's hands shook as he reached into his coat and pulled out a worn photograph. Edges torn, colors faded. "Cato," the man whispered. His voice cracked. "My son." The crowd gasped. Cato blinked, confused. He looked at Mama Thandi. "Mama, why is he calling me that?" The man approached slowly, as if afraid the boy might vanish. One of the bodyguards held out the photo for everyone to see. It showed a younger Cato, cleaner, healthier, smiling beside a man wearing a chief's necklace. The villagers erupted. "Chief Mufasa's missing son. It cannot be. This small boy? He was lost years ago." The leader's voice trembled. "My son was taken during an attack. Fire everywhere. People running. We searched the mountains, the rivers, every village. But he vanished. Until today." Cato stared at the photograph. His breathing quickened. His eyes widened as memories slammed into him like broken waves. He saw fire, screaming, running through darkness, falling, hunger eating his belly, the cold of night, his own name slipping from his mind as fear swallowed everything. He staggered back, clutching his head. I remember. I remember running. I remember crying for someone, but nobody came." Mama Thandi held his shoulders. "Easy, my child. Breathe." The chief stepped closer, tears filling his eyes. "My boy, you were lost for so long. But the ancestors, they brought you here." The villagers bowed their heads. Some whispered prayers. Others touched the ground, honoring the spirits. But Cato did not move toward the chief. He looked at the rich clothes, the shining cars, the guards with guns. He looked at the crowd staring at him like he was no longer the same boy who swept floors and washed spoons. Then he looked at Mama Thandi. He saw the woman who gave him food when his stomach screamed. The woman who defended him when the world spat on him. The woman who called him, "My child," even when she had nothing. Cato's lips trembled. He took one step forward, then another. But not toward the chief. He ran straight into Mama Thandi's arms. He grabbed her waist tightly, burying his face against her stomach, crying with the kind of tears that come from the deepest caves of the heart. "I don't want to leave you, Mama. You fed me. You kept me alive. You are my mother." Mama Thandi's own tears fell into his hair. She wrapped him gently. "My son, I only did what any mother with a beating heart would do." The villagers stared, speechless. All the cruel whispers, all the insults, all the times they pushed Cato away or mocked him, now hung over them like a dark cloud of shame. Mama Kalisa, once loud and proud, lowered her head and stepped behind the crowd, hiding her face. The chief watched the scene with trembling hands. Then he raised his voice so all could hear. "This woman," he pointed at Mama Thandi, "this woman carries the heart of the ancestors." His voice echoed across the village. "She fed a child the world rejected. She protected my blood without knowing who he was. She saw a lost child and gave him life again." The villagers nodded slowly, guilt heavy in their throats. The chief continued, "In our land, the ancestors watch every step we take. They bless kindness, they punish cruelty, and they guide destinies that humans cannot see." He turned to Mama Thandi. "You will never know hunger again. You will never struggle alone. You have fed my son, now let me feed your future." Mama Thandi tried to protest. "I did not do it for reward. I did it because no child should suffer." The chief smiled softly. "That is why the ancestors chose you." Cato wiped his tears and looked up at her. "Mama, no matter where I go, my heart stays with you." Mama Thandi pressed her forehead gently against his. "And my blessings go with you always." The crowd stood silent, humbled, witnessing a truth greater than wealth, greater than fear, greater than gossip. Kindness carries a power that even chiefs must bow to. And as the wind blew through the village, soft, warm, like a whisper from the ancestors themselves, it seemed to say, "Good deeds never die. They return like rain to the earth that gave them life."